Now that we're in here, so many stories to be told. Vision so clear. The more we hear, life unfolds. Yeah. No matter where you are, from near or from afar. Now is the time to go for what we know. It's just now that we're in here, so many stories to be told. Vision so clear. The more we hear, life unfolds. No matter where you are, from near or from afar. Now is the time to go for what we know. It's just us radio show.
Hello, welcome to the It's Just Us radio show. I'm Charlene Bowden. So glad you're joining me tonight. And my guest this evening is Mr. Andre Joseph. Mr. Joseph was introduced to me, my tongue is tied over here. Mr. Joseph was introduced to me by a dear friend, and I am so happy to make his acquaintance. Welcome to the show, Mr. Joseph.
Thank you, Charlene, and I'm really happy to be here today.
It's wonderful. May I call you Dre?
Absolutely.
Okay. I know that's what your friends call you, and hopefully I'm closer to the friend side than I am to the interviewer side of the conversation.
Oh, yeah, they've been calling me that since New York Film Academy, so you're definitely in the club.
Oh, good. I'm honored. Well, let's just start with an introduction. If you would tell our audience more about yourself and share just a little bit of your story that led to where you are in the arts today.
So I'm an independent filmmaker based out of Staten Island, New York. I've been working professionally now for 12 years, although I've been mainly making a lot of short films and little music videos with my friends and my cousins since 1997. So we're going way back to going into 8th grade. It started for me when, as a kid, I used to watch a lot of old cartoons and old Disney movies and anything that was out in the theaters or out on television. And, me and my cousins, we would take my action figures and then we would reenact everything that we saw on screen. And at the same time, as we were growing up, my mom would always have me stay over at my grandmother's house in Brooklyn whenever they were working, and my cousins would also be over there too. So as we got a little older, we started doing the same thing just with ourselves, not just with the toys, but just seeing what we saw on movies and TV and kind of like playing charades in our hallway and in the bedroom. And our uncle, who was living with my grandmother at the time, had just gotten one of those old VHS cameras, and we wanted to use it to film some of the skits that we were doing. But, we were like between 10 and 12 years old, so he didn't trust us to use the camera without breaking it, so we didn't get that chance. But we were always writing different ideas and things that we would have liked to make into our own movies. And then about a couple of years later, we were on a summer vacation in South Carolina, and my mom had just gotten her own camera. So, we made some friends in our hotel, and I kind of bugged her to let us borrow it for one of these ideas that we had. So she said, okay, as long as it's, nothing crazy, and I got to use the camera and make sure, it's just done in a proper fashion. So great, and we write like this little detective story idea in our hotel. And we had so much fun doing it in 2 days. And then the next thing you know, it was like every month, at least like during a weekend or after school, I would get together if my cousins were at home or my friends at school, and we would just film stuff, once I got my own camera, and I was constantly writing and, really wanting to make movies for all of my life. But my parents, of course, they didn't know if I was serious about it or not. They thought it was going to be one of those phases. So when I was in high school, they decided, okay, let's enroll him into the New York Film Academy for their summer program. So he'll see how tough it actually is to make a real movie. And when I did the program over at the Dalton School in Manhattan, it was definitely more of a challenge because you're working with actual 60 millimeter celluloid film. and you're learning how to shoot, how to light, how to block a scene, and even to physically edit the footage, not doing it on a computer or doing it with the two VHS recorders, but actually having to do it physically. And as challenging as that was, it only made me want to do it more once I actually knew what I was doing. So they knew after that summer that I was serious about it. And, long story short, go to Emerson College a few years after high school, get my degree, and then I just decided to start working professionally after that.
Wow, that's really cool. And I'm just thinking about you with your friends and your cousins just coming up with storylines and uh, shooting it and action and cut. Just seeing you all in your own way, possibly. Just kind of mimicking what you've seen or what you've heard or even experienced from quote unquote Hollywood. And I love the imagination that you all had. Sounds like at a very young age to even, I mean, you had the acting skill, you had the scene that you all were setting. Talk more about that, and share just a little bit too, if any of those children at the time are doing some of the work that you're doing now.
I would say very few of them do. I mean, some of my friends now, there's a few that do work with me. My friend Albert Albanese, who went to high school with me, he's gone on to be my assistant director on some of my current projects. He's mostly into podcasting, and he works a regular day job on the island, but he still loves it enough that he always wants to be part of it. And then, some of my friends, they kind of like drifted off into different directions. Some of the people that I know in New York Film Academy did go on to produce some things on their own or work for various different studios and television productions. And, as far as like the ideas that we would come up with, it was mostly sometimes some of it was just knockoffs of movies that we grew up on, whether it was like Lethal Weapon or RoboCop or Dirty Harry, that sort of thing. But then sometimes the ideas would also be sort of like these weird sort of fusions of like some of the video games that we grew up playing, and let's mesh that with some comic book that we would read, and let's put the two together and come up with our own thing. So sometimes there's always like a mixture of inspirations wherever we saw it, and then just kind of like putting it together on paper. And granted, we didn't have like the money or resources to make it look like Hollywood, but in our minds, we were making it for us. So, it didn't matter if everything had to be shot inside my mom's house, or if I had to like go into the backyard or, the neighbor's backyard to go and film what would be like, a big budget scene in a normal Hollywood movie. It was the imagination that was coming through us when we were doing these things. And, some of us obviously were always joking around and not always taking it seriously. But for me, I always treated it like I was doing the real thing, and I feel like those experiences did prepare me for a lot of what I would endure on sets now when it comes to wrangling talent and trying to figure out how to pull off an interesting scene with the right type of shots and things like that.
And I would imagine that it would possibly even inspire you in some way to just keep pushing through, even if budget isn't quite what you want it to be, or maybe not even there at all, but you have a story or something that's in you that you want to convey through the visual arts, whether it's your photography or videography. I would imagine just if you sat for a second and just go back to the day when, hey, I had a vision, a desire, like you were saying, back then to just do the art. And I didn't let those circumstances stop me. That's a powerful message to someone who wants to do this work.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I remember back in those days, my biggest frustration was just getting my friends to show up when I asked them to be there, because everybody back then gets caught up with homework, they get caught up in whatever extracurricular activities they're doing, or they just think that, it's just silly fun and games. Not everybody's really into it, and that's understandable. But, at the same time, for me, it was like, hey, there are people that I knew that were taking performing arts classes and, who liked taking their own video cameras and shooting silly skits. So I was always open to get people that were engaged. And sometimes, you would have like a really great idea. You want to get a lot of people to come out and act in your movie or even kind of help you behind the scenes. So
Mm-hmm.
if they weren't there, sometimes it was discouraging. It always felt like a setback, but you always figured out a different way of whether you go and ask somebody else that you might know who wants to be part of it, or even just act in it yourself, and that
Mm-hmm.
helped me through a lot of those kind of difficulties. Now it's different. I mean, you just put out an ad, and as long as everything is correct, whether you're paying the actors or if you're giving them footage for their reel, they're willing to come out. And then it's just a matter of making sure that they actually give you the performance that you want, and at the same time that they're going to be as cooperative as possible with you when you're working with them on
Mm-hmm.
set.
Yeah, that can be a challenge because people have a lot of different motives and a lot of different intentions and reasons why they do the things they do. And oftentimes, and I'm guessing because I'm not necessarily in the same type of creative headspace that you are, but when we carry um, those projects or those babies, if you will, within us, and we want to see it manifest, it's a great day, when we can find someone who can embrace just a portion, maybe not that entire passion or the vision that we have to make a thing happen. But and then some people may be in it for money, some people may be in it for fame, some people may be in it just because they're your friend. So I totally get what you were saying about um, just the reasons why people, or just getting people to show up. I think that's how you put it. Just getting those people to show up to pull this thing together. And sometimes you have to have a tripod, couple of cameras, and do it yourself because it's just burning in you to get it out, and it needs an outlet. And sometimes we have to just do how we do, you know.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much been my attitude from day one. Is just sometimes when you have that idea and you're passionate enough that you want to see it come to life, it's not always the most healthiest to try to beg other people to get your work produced. I mean, yes, there's many people that have been able to hustle and do the grind, and it pays off, and God bless them, it does pay off. But there's also a lot of people out there that, they may have a great script or they may have a great concept that they want to, get Hollywood to back up. And sometimes the business is always changing and people are looking for whatever is hot at the moment. And that makes it difficult for somebody who may not have an agent or a manager to maneuver their way around the difficulty of the industry. And that's something that I'm still, even to this day, still trying to figure out for myself is what kind of filmmaker do I want to be? Do I want to go the Hollywood route and produce what they want to see out there? Or do I want to, grab the bull by its horns and produce work that's going to challenge me on many fronts and still be able to be seen at festivals or through some type of fair distribution deal that's going to allow my work to get out there and to generate a response. It's so much of it comes really down to, are you in it for, as you say, some people who want to have the fame, the fortune, be on Entertainment Tonight, be on E! Online and all that, and be loved by millions, or do you just want to do good work that's going to resonate with people, and whatever the response may be, you just want the response to be good enough that you can make your next film. And I feel like I'm closer to the latter at the moment.
Yeah, I totally get that. And you kind of took me to my next question for you. Um, you have an extensive history, as I mentioned earlier, in the visual arts, specifically around video photography. Who are or who were some of your influences, and what was it about their work or their work ethic, which is kind of what you're talking about now, that really spoke to you?
I think in the very beginning, because I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, it has to be legends like Steven Spielberg, George Lucas. I would say John Singleton certainly stands out because those guys they would put their passion through the stories that they told. And, as you get older, you start to see their technique and why they had that emotional response, why you have that emotional response from the work that they put out there, and see the themes that they inject into their storytelling. So I would say from a storytelling standpoint, and certainly from a technical standpoint, those three are absolutely ones that stand out. Spike Lee also in that regard too. As I got older, I think I engage more into like Michael Mann, who did Heat, because he has more of a visceral type of visual style, and plays with the idea of characters not being exactly black and white. There's a whole lot of gray area in the world, and I would even say somebody like Paul Thomas Anderson with Boogie Nights and There Will Be Blood, who also is very much into those quiet moments in the midst of a conversation or in the midst of tension in his type of storytelling, and how he conveys that even with everything that he puts into a shot. The importance of every little detail is so crucial in his own ability to tell a story and craft it in his cinematography, his camera work. And the same would also go for David Fincher with Fight Club and Social Network. Curious Case of Benjamin Button, same deal. He's another one that just absolutely has this incredible style that every time you watch a movie, it's like watching a masterpiece. It's like watching art. And it goes beyond just being cinema to me. It's like you really feel like you're in there, you're into that story.
What types of, speaking about content, what do you have a passion? What is your passion as it pertains to what messages really speak to you that you want to present to your audiences through your work? What really moves you?
I think that's a very good question. As I look back at a lot of my past work, I mean, going as far back to my first feature film, Priceless, and all the way till, most recently with The Saxophonist, I think a lot of my stories have this particular theme about defying odds and sometimes a sense of redemption in life. Because I feel like growing up, being that film has always been my passion for the longest time, there's just been many moments where I felt like this was the only thing for me and there was nothing else. I was never a great athlete. My academics didn't really get better until like the tail end of high school, going to college. And even then I had my obstacles that I've had to face. And also I think just being into a particular profession that isn't so easy to sustain a living with, I've had those moments of people saying to me, this is just, a silly dream. You should go get a city job. And, that's where you're going to be able to have your security. And again, I don't look down on those type of people. They have to do what they have to do to feed their families, and there are noble professions out there. But for me, this is something that I've always wanted to do for all my life, is to tell stories and to inspire people. And, when I look at, say, like something like Rocky, or, any film that's about people coming and going from the distance to reach an incredible goal, that's always been my thing. So whether it's the goal of wanting to be a successful jazz musician, like in The Saxophonist, or the case of redemption, like my main character in Dishonorable Vendetta and the sequel Vendetta Games, that idea, sometimes things that don't go right in your life and you're looking for that sense of trying to get back to some sense of normalcy and to do the
Mm-hmm.
right thing to bring justice. And sometimes you're always encountering things that are not just external forces, but internal forces that prevent you from achieving a dream or a goal, or to find your path to become something much more greater for yourself in life. So I feel like those things are always injected into the DNA of my own screenwriting.
Yeah, and you haven't been in the industry itself for very long. I mean, you mentioned you've been doing this type of work since you were a child, but you haven't been really in the industry very long. Take us back to that first experience. leading up to the release of your very first project, like you had all of the bells and the whistles, and you might have had the music there and the actors in place, lights, camera, action. What was that moment like for you?
That moment was so surreal from day one, because I came out of college with that determination of here's the script that I want to produce. It's my first movie to get through the door and go to American Black Film Festival, go to all the big name festivals that are out there. And I felt like I had the right story. Here's this jewel thief who's trying to find redemption through his lost loved one and then find something much more greater in life through his loved one's daughter and realizing he has to become a better man, that she's just not looking for somebody that's going to get her out of her single womanhood situation, but someone who's going to be there and create a family. And he has to obviously get past his own demons and the people that are after him in order to achieve that type of goal in his life. So, here was a situation in which I had a lot of union actors from SAG who'd all done numerous television projects, who've done a lot of films, have most of them working as character actors in New York. And I can remember that first day in Staten Island, just shooting with them, and the experience of finally being on a set where I had my own crew, we had a professional camera, and we were really running this like a well-oiled machine, So to put all that work into it and spent a lot of money trying to get it right, and having an incredible soundtrack to go along with it by Bernard Purdy, this was something that I really thought would be incredible and, be the thing that's going to hopefully get calls coming in and, the doors would finally open for me as a filmmaker. And, I'm still proud of that film. I'm still proud of the actors I worked with, and I still think highly in that regard with the efforts that we had. Now, you talk about like when it first premiered, having Tribeca Cinemas as your venue and having your name and your film's title on the marquee was like something I never thought was ever going to happen. And to see it in real life, it was like, wow, this is, the dream is finally coming true. I feel like I'm really grasping at something really big here. The response was great to the film that night. It was mostly the cast and the crew, but people seeing it for the first time, it was just an unbelievable good feeling like, okay, now things are going to start happening. But here's where I want to inject a little bit of reality, which is, the film got done, and next thing you know, it's like, okay, now we spent all this money, now we got to start doing some film festivals. And I must have applied to like at least 10 that I thought were the big ones, and they all said no, except for one, which I won't name here, but because I paid a ridiculous entry fee, it got accepted. But it's still, that crushed my soul for a while, because I felt like all that work and it's not getting seen, And then the funny thing that happened, and this is a learning lesson that came out of it, was when I went to American Black Film Festival that following year and made a couple of networking contacts with some other filmmakers in the area, and I had copies of my movie. So I, told them about it, and I gave them a copy just to check out. Many of those same people would come back to me later in the festival and would tell me how amazed they were with the production quality and the direction, and they were really surprised how good it was. And that was a particular moment that really turned my own determination around, because I went from saying, I'm just kind of like throwing my hands up at this point, I don't know what else to do, to like now you get these people saying that they like what they saw. What would have I done if I just maybe spent a little extra money to apply to more festivals, and maybe the chances would have been better for me to get accepted and to continue to build that audience. So I think that was the learning lesson coming out of that first film, was not to give up, just to keep on pushing forward with your work and make sure under any circumstances, not just the festivals, but, whether it's a public screening or getting your local community center or even getting an art exhibit to show your film, do whatever you can to build your audience from the street level, because those are the people that are going to support you in the years that come.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right about that. There are a lot of people that go to those, what we might call, I don't know, maybe grassroots or less popular. They're not all the red carpet type events and things like that. But oftentimes, like you said, those are people are truly the ones that are your fans, because they appreciate your work for different reasons. I mean, everybody has their reasons for supporting who they support. But one thing that I appreciate about theater, and I know we're not talking about that specifically, but one thing I appreciate about theater is theater goers, and you can tell those people who really appreciate theater, for all of their own reasons. They like going to live performances. They like hearing some of the classics and seeing some of the classics being performed in front of them. They like the storylines. They like the catalogs, if you will, of the playwright. So you're right in that those film festivals are where people who are the enthusiasts will go and give your project longevity. I think that's my personal opinion, but I would imagine that they're some of the ones that keeps the legs up under your work more often than not. And just thinking about, too, when you mentioned some of your influencers, that's part of what happens with those people, because they put information out, they put their project out, and now the consumer has kept the legs of those projects going, and now those names become the ones like who you named earlier that kind of, they definitely paved some ways for you and for other filmmakers coming up behind you. But they also had some staying power. I'm a big proponent of staying power as it pertains to music, as it pertains to film, movies, theaters, whatever. But I want to talk a little bit more about festivals, because you've mentioned that several times, and I appreciate you kind of segueing over into that conversation. So first of all, let me congratulate you for winning the American Cinematic Arts Award for Best Crime and Thriller Feature with the Vendetta Games. And by the way, I really like the title. I really do. What is it about, beyond the possibility of winning that award or winning an award in a film festival? And we may have just answered this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why did you want to enter film festivals? What all did you really want to get out of those experiences beyond the possibility of winning the big prize, if you will? And again, we may have answered that, so feel free to say, as I said, Charlene.
Oh, sure. These festivals, even from the beginnings when I was in college, and I've gone to American Black Film Festival and I've gone to Tribeca Film Festival, it's just, I think there's a prestige level of having your work seen by the public that otherwise may not know about your movie if they ever went to a major cineplex. I think it's also because, depending on the festivals that you're going to, sometimes there's always the star power that could be very attractive. So there's always like the thought that maybe somebody of note will take a look at your work, whether they're a judge, whether they may just be like some surprise person in the audience. You want to have that kind of feeling if it's ever going to be something like you feel like, okay, this is something worth talking about, and getting that kind of endorsement for your work. I think it's just down to seeing how your work plays, getting the response from the people. And also at the same time, the networking is so important to find the right people that are going to help you with your future films, be it actors, cinematographers, editors, musicians. You want to be able to have all those options available to you to make it more feasible for you to get your next film produced. Or if you have a project, then maybe you can refer that person you just met to one of your friends' projects. That's always something that's worthwhile that I've always done, is doing a referral business for a number of my filmmaker friends that I know, mostly on the East Coast. And then as far as the awards go, I think in the very beginning for me, it was always about having those awards on your resume to make it much more easier for you to get jobs. That was really my thing. I think in the initial years was just trying to build from here's what I have in terms of the work that I've done. Now I need to do something that's going to allow me to obviously bring some income into my bank account. So if I at least show that, hey, I've gotten these accolades, that's going to help me to get that going. I think now, given the couple of awards that I've won at these festivals and the recent ones that you mentioned, I think it's just more for me about now I want to see my actors and my crew actually start to win and get that recognition at the same time. And also just the sense of responsibility that now I'm kind of like, and this is something that's been dawning on me recently, becoming more of a role model for those people that are in college that are wanting to get out and make their own films on a professional level. So there's sort of like that level of being the right kind of mentor to them to show them the right way and not be complacent. It's very easy to win an award like this and think that now, you're hot stuff. But for me, it's always about, okay, this is great. This is a big footnote. But now I don't want to get lazy and feel like, okay, now the phone call's going to come in. So I want to treat everything that I do going forward as if it's either my very first movie or this could be the last one and I just got to go all out, So that way I feel like I'm still hungry at what I'm trying to do and not feeling like, okay, I got this whole track record. Nobody can bug me anymore. This is it. I mean, you want to put your value up as a professional and make that clear to some people, but at the same time, you don't also want to lose sight and, sometimes not be totally satisfied until you feel like this is all as far as you can go with it.
Yeah, I get that. And going into that moment when, the lights come back up after the film is over. And this is really one thing I like about going to some film festivals and premieres and things like that for independent artists. You have a chance to have conversation, or some of them may even have a talk back at the end of the presentation, depending on where the films are screened. Share some feedback that you've received. What are people saying about your work?
Well, I would say particularly with the saxophonist, that's the one where I feel like the response has been overwhelmingly positive. We've played in a number of festivals now, including the Brightside Tavern Film Festival in Jersey City, which I attended. And, it was like the last movie that played on my block. And once it was done, I was amazed by the amount of people that I didn't think were really like jazz fans from the audience that I saw. And they all were engaged with the story. They loved the way it was shot. They loved the performance of my lead actor, Bevan Lawrence, who was making his acting debut. I had to work with him for 8 months to get into acting performance outside of his own profession as a jazz musician. So they were really impressed with his natural ability as an actor on the screen. And they all could relate to that idea of, being caught between, do you make the sacrifice for your career or do you make the sacrifice for somebody that you're in love with? I feel like it's something that any struggling artist can easily relate to, especially if you live in a big city like New York. So I think a lot of those people were able to understand that from what they saw in the movie. And even some festivals that I didn't attend, like the Hollywood South Urban Film Festival in Mississippi, where my film played, it was the same thing. I was actually surprised that there were enough people, and I was impressed for it, who would email me back saying how much they loved what they saw in terms of the content of it. And most importantly, that they saw a movie where you had Black characters that were not caught up in, the drama of being, caught up in criminal lifestyles or infidelity or the things that you typically see on normal TV and film, but something that's a little bit more relatable that anybody can relate to on a universal level. And that was always my intent, to make that type of movie that I think was accessible to all audiences of all ages, regardless of whether or not you're into jazz music. And I feel like in that regard, the film is a big success.
And I like that. I had a conversation with a friend a few years ago, actually, and we were talking about movies. And I can't remember what specific movie we were talking about at that time. And it really, what I'm about to say really doesn't pertain to any specific movie, but what I shared with him was I think it's really okay for a movie to end with a real life scenario. You know, we don't, I know it makes us feel warm and fuzzy and good, and we walk away with smiles and cheers and everything when the person we want to win wins. You know, we definitely don't want the person that we want to win to be cut out of the piece. But sometimes I just really want to see a good film played all the way out and have something that's really close to just a real ending. You know, real experiences like you're sharing. Even some reality shows that I've seen are not real. You know, they're just it's like whose whose reality is this? You know, and it's just glamorized for again many different reasons. Oftentimes for financial reasons, but I appreciate work that's done, like you're saying about your work. Um, just and just thinking about people of color, blacks, African Americans, whatever preference they are, for people listening, about us just being who we are. We're an amazing people. And some of our stories either get fluffed too far up that they don't even seem to be real, or they get watered so far down that it becomes a stereotypical story about us, and we're all perceived as being either on that side or on the other side. And I think that those are some of my favorite films to sit and watch and to absorb and just to feel. Those to me are feel good movies. You know, I like to see some people win. You know, good over evil and all these other different things. But sometimes, can I just see the woman go to the grocery store and and have a, go buy her groceries and everything, and pay for them. She has the money to pay for it. She gets to her car safely. She puts things in her trunk, and she closes all of her doors, and she takes the shopping cart back, and she just sits there and smiles. You know, it doesn't have to have the fanfare for me all the time. And that just I'm sure that's just me, but that's a feel good for me. It's like, you know what? I need to remember those times, all those many times that I have gone to the grocery store and I've had a similar experience that this woman had, and just hold on to those and not remember the time I went and somebody hit my car with a shopping cart, or the time that I didn't have enough cash at the register, or all of those extremes, and just be good with, yeah, that was a good day too. You know what I mean?
Well, that's a great point that you bring up, and this is actually something that's really influenced my writing in the last several years. I may be 35 years old, but I was watching a lot of old TV shows growing up, and even in high school, shows like Hill Street Blues, St. Elsewhere, a lot of the dramas like L.A. Law that spawned the likes of Denzel Washington, Blair Underwood, and, some of the guys I look up to as actors. And I would read a lot of the backstories and interviews with the writers because those shows had such incredible writing in their day and have influenced virtually everything you see now on television, on Netflix, you name it. And one thing that you've noticed when you watch those shows, even today, is they're always continuing arcs in those tales where different storylines don't just end in 60 minutes. They go on for a whole season, sometimes even many years. So, like what I try to say is, like, sometimes, let's say if you're going to do a movie about a drug addict, or you're going to tell a story about a drug addict, it's very difficult to just do a 2-hour movie of somebody going through the withdrawal of the whole process, and then by the final act they're completely cleaned and it's all happily ever after, the skies open up. Well, we know that's not the way reality works. When it takes somebody that may have gone to rehab and has been clean, it's a struggle every day to remain clean for the rest of your life. So, what I say to that in that regard, and the way that I tend to end a lot of my films now, and I'm not going to go into spoiler territory on the recent ones, but I like to always end it in a manner that feels like it's sort of in the middle. You know, a situation may seem to be resolved, but whatever may be going on within that character is going to be an ongoing thing for the rest of their life. There's something they may have to live with, or making a decision that may not exactly be the smartest financially, but for the heart, it might be the right way to go, for their own self peace of mind. You know,
Hmm.
so I'm always trying to look at those things and not always go the commercial route where everything has to be tied up in a neat bow. At the same time, I'm not even big on sometimes where everything has to end on a bad note, and then you come out of the
Hmm.
movie kind of depressed or, you know, more confused than anything else. So I'm always going for like something that I feel like what's the most natural conclusion for this character, and to do it in a way where it's not about making sequels and continuing on from there, but you know, ultimately we may be away from their story, but their story is going to go on long after that reel is over. So I always kind of like to leave that open ended for people to guess like where that character might be going down the line without having to show it through making another sequel or something of that sort.
And I think that that's for me. Again, I can only speak for myself. For me, that's entertainment. Um, it may sound odd because oftentimes people think about entertainment as something that's, of course, entertaining in a way that makes them feel good and jovial and maybe laughing, maybe joking, just kind of upbeat and and perky and all this good stuff. But I really can appreciate and involve myself in what you just described, especially if you think about someone who has, um, who the story or the film or the movie or the show is focusing on an addiction or a habit. Because if that story is, to me, if it's told well, well and right, and it's close to correctly as possible, it cannot be effectively told without highlighting the people that are impacted by that story. Um, I may get some feedback on this, but right now one of my favorite TV shows is Moms.
Okay.
Um, because of that, because I've worked in the mental health field, I've worked in the substance abuse field, I have a degree in psychology, I'm a peer support leader, I'm a spiritual advisor, I'm into the lives of people to that level, and I really like that someone was thoughtful enough to show these women and how the children are impacted. Past relationships were impacted. Future relationships could be impacted. The jobs, their religion, their faith, or whatever it is. That show is just so entertaining to me because, again, I talk to the people that are living similar lives that are going on with like in that show. So yeah, and I know it's 30 minutes, and I get it a film maybe an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. And I get it that we can't tell the whole story, but I also think that, and this, and I'm going way off script here for myself, but that's really part of the mission of my production company. My radio show, It's Just Us Radio, It's Just Us Talk Show, my TV show. The mission is to be a platform for people to come share their authentic stories in an effort to help encourage and motivate others to not give up on their dreams, their hopes, those things that they're working on. I found that for myself, I kept getting lost in other people's stories because they only had 30 minutes to tell it to me. So I saw how they started off, whether it was a child or whether they were a teenager or whether they were an older person. I saw them start off. And then I saw that at the end that they were free from their addictions, that they got the job or that they got the man or they got the woman. It's like, what happened here in the middle? We got the first 10 minutes and we got the last 10 minutes. What happened during those 10 minutes in the middle? Because I keep getting stuck in there and I'm not getting that from anywhere. And I thought about it, and it's like, if I'm feeling that way, I'm sure other people feel that way too. So we've opened up this place for people to come just like yourself. And I appreciate that you shared the aha that you had from, during your first full released project experience, because that's what we do here. And so I see that playing out as you shared in your films. I see that playing out in film, TV, movies, that people just keep getting lost. And so we create our own stories, we create our, well, maybe they did this, and that's how they got to the riches and the fame and the glory at the end of the show. And it's like, wow, but here I am now. I'm broke. Now I'm homeless. Why didn't my ending be like their happy ending? Possibly because you didn't hear what happened in the middle. I don't know. That's my opinion, my theory. That's how we do what we do here at the show and with the production company. And I guess you can tell that's very passionate for me. So thank you for giving me the space to share all that. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, no, I mean that's always been my thing, even as a writer, is always thinking in terms of character arcs, and where it's not always just here's where we start and this is where this character's going to end up. It's always about what are those little moments that are going to turn that particular character into making specific decisions for themselves, and those decisions impacting the natural conclusion of the tale. I mean, it's easy to say, like, yes, in real life, like you look at, for a lot of filmmakers, actors, and people just trying to get into the entertainment business in general, they're always looking at previous successes of the people that they look up to. Whether it's Steven Spielberg getting his first gig from Universal Television when he was in his late teens, or how certain actors and filmmakers had mentors growing up, or snuck into somebody's studio office and started applying for jobs. You hear all these stories as the inspiration for how people got from where they started to where they are now. But truth is, I think everybody's story is so different based on the time, based on the circumstances, and it's great to fall back onto those stories just to keep yourself motivated. But like you say, it's always the little gaps in the middle that we don't always look at when it comes to how to reach specific goals for ourselves. And I mean, for where I am today versus where I was when I got out of college, there's a whole lot of middle right there that I could, take up more than 2 hours to even talk about. I mean, you could talk about the ups and downs, difficulties being a production assistant on jobs, or having different mentors come in and out of my life that have impacted the way that I've worked. There's so much to it, but every experience has allowed me to grow and develop and to be able to tell more solid stories that are more earthier and not always the superficial stuff that Hollywood puts out. And that's changed my approach a lot, towards actors, towards my own style of filmmaking. And people get shocked sometimes when they see, like, okay, this guy's doing an action movie 1 minute. Next thing you know, now he's doing a drama about jazz. It's like, how the hell did that happen? Well, circumstances in the middle can always change your focus and your direction, or something that's impacting your life that will set you into the right mood to say, okay, now it's the time to tell this particular story because I want this kind of response from people, and there's something personal that I need to gain out of that at that particular moment in time.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. Oh, this is really good, really rich conversation. I'm really so glad you joined me today. So, Dre, tell us what you're working on, and please tell us how people can learn more about your work and follow you on social media and your other platforms.
Okay, so my short film, The Saxophonist, you can actually see it right now on Amazon Prime and through the Bebop channel, which I believe is beboptv.com. And you could also, if you're in Las Vegas, we're going to be playing it at the Hollywood Dreams Film Festival next month. I can't announce the date yet, but it will be announced early next month. And also in that same festival, we will be playing the animated trailer for my next feature film, which is American Gunslingers, which is going to be a feature-length western that we're looking to shoot next year. It's going to star myself and my lead actor from Vendetta Games, Chris Carula, and the script was written by Drew Hendrickson, who also wrote the award-winning short film Power of Prayer. He's also going to be there at the festival because our script is up for a nomination, and we have a trailer, a live action trailer that's coming out for that very soon. That's in the post production phase at the moment. So you'll be hearing more about that in the coming year. And I'm also working on a music video for my friend Mylan Lazistan called Sangria, which is going to shoot next month. I had done a music video with him previously called Music at Midnight, which has gotten played at the Garden State Film Festival and the Philadelphia Independent Film Festival. So this will be my second collaboration with him, and hopefully have that video out before the end of this year. And to follow me on all updates about my work, you can follow me on Twitter at AJEPYX. That's AJ Epics. Same handle for my Instagram. And also, you can follow me on the AJ Productions Facebook page, as well as my official website, which is ajepyxproductions.com.
And as always, if any of our guests miss any of that information, please feel free to reach out to us here at the It's Just Us radio show. We can get you in contact with any of our guests to get more information and to definitely support their work. And it sounds like you have maybe one or two things going on, so you might be a little bit busy over the next few months, huh?
Oh, I'm busy right now. It's been really hectic, but more productive than it's ever been. So I'm just taking it a step every day, and it's a lot. But I got like a really good intern that's working with me right now. I have a great team uh, between myself and my friends Albert and Thomas Melendez, who works with me as well. So all these guys, and even the guys that are on the current projects, they're all huge helps of mine. I'm always supportive of what they do, and they know it's crazy for me, even when it feels like sometimes it's a lot on my plate to tackle. But every day we always take it a step at a time, and we just try to see to the full completion of our work.
We have just a couple of minutes left, Dre. You just said something that I want you to speak a little bit more to. You had an amazing opportunity to do a wonderful internship. And if you wouldn't, like in the last few minutes that we have together, share with our audience, especially those who may be in this industry and coming up to opportunities for internships, or someone who may now be seeking an internship or may even be doing an internship. Just talk briefly to what's important, to during that time to take advantage of that opportunity. What are some things that, from your experience, what would you say?
I would say for me, I interned for VH1 Classic long before it became MTV Classic. The important thing about that time, besides the fact that the people there were amazing and I miss them every day, is just don't go into these internships just to do runs and fetching coffee for people. Take advantage of whatever gets thrown your way that's going to be productive for you down the line. Learn about teamwork, learn about the production process, the way people communicate with one another to get a job done at the end of the day, and grasp on that. Take notes, write a journal if you need to. Those experiences that you have as an intern, are as long as you're treated almost like you're a valuable employee, it's worthwhile to do. But those experiences help you along to improve ultimately what you're going to be doing if you're ever in a leadership position one day and you have to designate jobs to people, or to be in that position that you may have seen somebody else do, but now once you're in that spot, you'll know exactly what to do based on what you've witnessed that other person do while you were an intern. I'd say you just absorb, learn, read, do as much as you can when you're in that position, because all that stuff will be valuable for you 5, 10 years down the line.
Very good advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know oftentimes people, just want to get their foot in the door, and when that opportunity comes, sometimes they don't know what to do with it. They may be starstruck or whatever, but those internships can be critical. They can be game changers sometimes, depending on what the person has an internship. So, thank you again for sharing that. And in closing, again, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
I just want to give a thanks to my mom and dad for supporting me for all of my life, and just believing in what I'm doing, that they've just sort of always encouraged me to keep going no matter what the circumstances are. So I love them both. And my cousin Richard, my cousin David, and Chris and Trisha. I want to thank, all the people that I've ever worked with on my films, whether you were an actor or crew member. There were good days, there were bad days, but there was always just the intent of getting the work done, getting it out there, and hopefully for everybody to reap the benefit in some way, no matter how it turned out. So I'm appreciative for everybody that I've ever worked with, and their success, my successes that I've had are just as much theirs as it is mine, and that goes for even the awards that I've achieved. That has more to do with what they've done to help me make my vision come to life, more so than just what I've been able to do for them.
Great way to end the show. Thank you so much for sharing that. That is so important to remember those people. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you again for being here, Dre. I really appreciated getting to know you and to know your work and the driving force behind your work. All the best to you and your endeavors. Please keep in touch with me. Keep me posted. And I think you were in Atlanta recently, so when you come back this way, nudge me and let me know so I can come and meet you in person.
Oh, absolutely. I will definitely let you know. And thank you so much again for having me on your show today. This is a really great opportunity.
Oh, you're more than welcome, and this is home now, so whenever you want to stop back by, please feel free to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And we thank you for tuning in to the It's Just Us radio show. As I've mentioned, if you want to reach any of our guests, our contact information will be coming up at the end of the broadcast. I'm Charlene Bowden, and until next time, I hope that you will continue to happen to life. Take good care.
The It's Just Us radio show. Thanks for tuning in to the It's Just Us radio show. For guest consideration, show ideas, or to contact any of our guests, please email us at itsjustusradio@gmail.com. Also, visit our website, itsjustusradio.com, to connect with us on social media. It's Just Us Radio is brought to you by It's Just Us Productions.